For 13 years, my life was a dream. I had a beautiful wife, 2 wonderful sons, and a home filled with laughter and love. Emily and I were the couple that others admired, partners in everything, from parenting to building our careers. I met Emily in college, and from the moment we started dating, I knew she was the one. She had a sharp mind, a kind heart, and a laugh that could brighten the darkest day. We built our life together step by step, supporting each other through every challenge. She became a nurse, passionate about caring for the elderly, while I pursued my own career in business. Though our jobs were demanding, we always made time for our family. Our sons, Ethan and Lucas, were the center of our world. Every evening, we had dinner together, sharing stories about our day. Weekends were spent at the park, watching the boys play while Emily and I held hands, smiling at how lucky we were. Of course, no marriage was perfect. We had our disagreements, small fights over household chores, occasional stress from work, but we always worked through them. Emily was my best friend, my partner, the woman I had promised to love forever. Looking back, I realize now that I had taken it all for granted. I believed we were uncheckable, that nothing could tear us apart, but I was wrong. Without realizing it, I was standing at the edge of a storm, completely unaware that everything I loved was about to be ripped away. It started with small things. At first, they were barely noticeable little shifts in her routine, slight changes in her tone. Emily had always been affectionate, quick to send a text during the day or steal a kiss before bed. But suddenly, the messages became fewer, the kisses less frequent. Then came the late nights. When Emily got promoted to director of nurses, I was thrilled for her. She had worked so hard, dedicating years to her profession, and I knew she deserved it. We celebrated that night, just the two of us, with dinner and wine. She held my hand and whispered,
"I couldn't have done this without you."
But soon after, she became busier than ever. She started coming home late, always with an excuse: staff meetings, paperwork, or emergencies at the hospital. I wanted to be understanding. After all, this was her dream job, and I knew the responsibilities were overwhelming. Then he entered the picture, her new assistant. At first, I didn't think much of it. Emily often mentioned colleagues, and I had never been the jealous type, but something felt different. She started talking about him more often, his efficiency, his dedication, his help in managing the team. Then, there were the small but alarming changes. Emily had never been secretive about her phone, but suddenly, it was always face down. She used to leave it charging on the nightstand, but now she took it everywhere, even to the bathroom. She used to be present, truly engaged when we talked. Now, she seemed distracted, her eyes darting away, her responses delayed. And then, the arguments began. Before, our disagreements had been over small things: who forgot to take out the trash, who was supposed to pick up the kids. But now, they felt different, more tense, more distant.
"Why are you so cold lately?"
I asked one night as she sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone.
"I'm just tired."
She replied without looking up, and for the first time, I felt it: a wall between us. A wall that hadn't been there before. The fights escalated. At first, I tried to ignore the small signs, convincing myself it was just stress from work. But I couldn't lie to myself forever. Something had changed between us. Emily had become distant, not just physically, but emotionally. The warmth in her eyes was gone, replaced by indifference. Our late-night conversations, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, had turned into strained silence. One evening, I tried to reach out.
"Emily,"
I said, watching her as she scrolled through her phone.
"can we talk?"
She barely glanced at me.
"About what?"
"Us."
She sighed, setting her phone down.
"I'm tired, okay? I don't want to argue."
"I'm not trying to argue,"
I said, my voice calmer than I felt.
"I just need to know, are we okay?"
She hesitated. That pause. That damn pause. It told me everything I needed to know. We were not okay. For weeks, I had been trying to hold on to what we had, but it felt like grasping at smoke. She was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. Then came the night that changed everything. We had another fight. It started over something trivial, maybe the kids, maybe the dishes. I can't even remember, but I remember how it ended. She stood there, her arms crossed, looking at me like I was a stranger.
"I don't love you anymore,"
she said. The words hit me like a fist to the gut. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. It felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. She turned away, as if she had just told me something as simple as we're out of milk, as if it meant nothing. And in that moment, I knew the woman I loved was gone. She was gone the next morning. I woke up to silence. No sound of her getting ready, no soft hum of her morning routine. Just an empty side of the bed and a note on the kitchen counter. I need space. I'll be staying at Mom's for a while. I stared at the words, reading them over and over, hoping they would change. They didn't. I wanted to call her, to demand an explanation, to beg her to come back. But I knew it would be useless. By noon, her brother came.
I'm here to pick up some of her things,
He said, not meeting my eyes. I let him in, watching as he moved through the house, collecting pieces of her life and shoving them into bags. The kids, she had taken them with her. I stood there, frozen, as he packed.
She's serious about this, isn't she?
I finally asked. His hand stopped mid-motion. He sighed.
Yeah, I think she is.
And just like that, my world collapsed. For the first time in 13 years, I was truly alone. Days turned into weeks. At first, I tried to fix things. I called, I texted, I asked to meet. She always had an excuse: too busy, too tired, not ready to talk. And then, one day, she just stopped responding altogether. She had moved on. And I was left standing in the ruins of what used to be our life. One evening, I drove past her mother's house. Her car was parked outside, and next to it his car, her assistant. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. So, this was it. She hadn't just left me. She had replaced me. I refused to believe it at first. Maybe he was just a friend. Maybe he was helping her with something. Maybe I was overthinking everything. But deep down, I already knew the truth. The late nights, the sudden coldness, the emotional distance, none of it was random. There was always a reason. And now, the reason had a name: her assistant. I started paying attention to the little things. She was always careful, always deleting messages, always making sure her phone was face down when she came over to discuss the kids. But no one is perfect. One night, I noticed her car wasn't in her mother's driveway. I drove around, my heart pounding. I had no idea where I was going, just that I needed to know. And then, at a hotel parking lot on the other side of town, I found it. My car. The car I bought. The car I paid for. And parked right beside it, his. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. So, this was what I had become. A fool chasing ghosts, searching for proof of something I already knew. But I needed more. The next day, I checked our phone records. Hundreds of messages, late-night calls, every single day. And yet, when I asked her about him, she barely even mentioned his name. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of betrayal crush me. It wasn't just the affair. It was the lies, the deception. The way she had made me feel like I was the problem while she was the one destroying our family. I had my proof, but what was I supposed to do with it? She came over that evening, just like every other week, to discuss the kids. But this time, I was ready. I had the phone records, the location data, and even photos of our car parked outside that hotel. I had spent the entire day replaying every moment of our marriage, trying to understand how we had ended up here. When she walked in, she barely looked at me.
How are the kids?
She asked, as if everything was normal. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out the stack of papers I had printed and placed them on the table between us. Her eyes flickered to them, then back to me. A long silence.
What's this?
She finally asked.
You tell me,
I said, my voice calm. She picked up the papers, flipping through them. I saw her hands tremble slightly. She didn't deny it. She didn't get angry. She just froze. Then, she exhaled a shaky breath and covered her face with her hands. I waited, and then, through her fingers, she whispered,
I'm sorry.
I should have felt victorious. I should have felt something. But all I felt was emptiness. Sorry for what? For lying, for cheating, for breaking our family apart. I swallowed the lump in my throat.
How long?
She hesitated.
6 months.
A bitter laugh escaped me. 6 months. Half a year of deception.
Why?
My voice cracked. She looked away.
I don't know.
Liar. I clenched my jaw.
So, what now?
She wiped her eyes and looked at me.
I can't be with him.
I blinked.
Excuse me.
Her voice was barely a whisper.
I left everything for him, but he'll never leave his wife.
I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. So this was it. She destroyed our marriage for a man who would never truly be hers. I should have felt pity. I should have felt anger. But all I felt was done. There was nothing left to say. The man she had ruined our family for had a family of his own. I found out not long after our confrontation. Maybe I had known deep down, but I needed proof. It didn't take much effort. A quick search on social media, a few online records, and there he was, a married man with 4 children. Pictures of family vacations, birthdays, his wife smiling beside him like they had the perfect life. So, while my wife was sneaking around with him, he was going home every night to his real family. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling with rage. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore, it was about injustice. She had destroyed our marriage for a man who got to keep his own. She lost everything: her husband, her family, her dignity. But he lost nothing. He still had his wife, his kids, his job. He still had the luxury of pretending to be a good man. And the worst part, she knew. She knew he was married, she had always known. And yet, she threw away everything for him. For what? A few stolen moments. A fantasy that was never real. I clenched my fists. This isn't over. She filed for divorce in January. It wasn't a surprise. By then, everything between us was beyond repair. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just signed the papers. After 13 years together, our marriage was reduced to a few legal documents. Cold, emotionless, final. At first, I thought that would be the end of it, that once she got what she wanted, she would disappear from my life for good. But something strange happened. She started acting kind. She would text me casually, as if we were still friends. At our children's events, she would sit near me, making small talk like nothing had happened. She even smiled at me. Why? Did she feel guilty? Did she regret it? Or was this just another game? I ignored her. I didn't have the energy to pretend. No matter how much she tried to act normal, I would never forget what she did. She had broken something in me that could never be fixed. And no smile, no friendly text, no small talk could ever change that. Nights were the worst. During the day, I could distract myself with work, with responsibilities, with anything to keep my mind busy. But at night, when everything was quiet, the thoughts crept in. Did she ever really love me? Was it all a lie? I replayed our entire relationship in my head, searching for signs I had missed. Every laugh, every kiss, every promise, were they real? Or had she always been capable of this kind of betrayal? It haunted me. Worse than the pain of losing her was the feeling of not being enough. I wasn't enough for her to stay faithful. I wasn't enough for her to fight for our marriage. I wasn't enough to be chosen. Even though I knew, logically, that her betrayal was her choice, not a reflection of my worth, my heart refused to believe it. And then there was the lingering question, would she ever regret it? Would there come a day when she looked at the life she had chosen and realized what she had lost? Or would she be happy with him, while I was left to pick up the broken pieces of our past? I wanted to believe that one day the pain would fade, but for now, it still felt raw. Revenge wasn't something I had ever considered before. But as I sat alone, staring at the evidence I had gathered, the messages, the call logs, the undeniable proof, I felt the anger boiling inside me. She had destroyed our family, and he got to live his life unchanged, still playing the role of a devoted husband and father. It wasn't fair. I had his personal information. His wife's name, her phone number, even their home address. A part of me wanted to tell her. To let her know the truth about the man she shared a bed with. Would she cry like I had? Would she feel the same soul-crushing pain that I did? But then, another thought crept in. What if I became just like them? If I exposed him, I wasn't doing it out of justice, I was doing it to hurt him, just like he had hurt me. And where would that leave me? Would it bring me peace, or would it just drag me further into this endless cycle of pain and betrayal? I clenched my fists, the war raging inside me. Did I have the right to destroy another family? Or was that just an excuse to justify my own pain? One thing was certain. I had the power to end his perfect little lie. The only question was, would I do it? I wondered if she ever lay awake at night, thinking about what she had done. Did she ever look at our children and feel even a flicker of regret? Did she ever hear an old song on the radio, something we used to sing together in the car, and feel that familiar ache in her chest? Or had she erased me completely? Maybe, to her, I was just a chapter she had closed, a past she had no intention of revisiting. But I couldn't believe that. Because there were moments, small moments, the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, the way her voice softened when she spoke about the past, the way she hesitated just for a second too long when we crossed paths. Maybe I was fooling myself. Maybe I just wanted to believe that I had mattered to her, but deep down, I knew the truth. Even if she never said it out loud, even if she never admitted it to anyone else, she would regret it one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, when the excitement of her new life faded. When she realized that happiness built on betrayal never lasts. When she saw me standing strong, moving forward without her. That's when she would understand. She had lost something real. And by then, it would be too late. There was no perfect ending to this story, no grand confrontation, no dramatic moment of reckoning. Just a quiet realization. I had to let go. Not for her, not for revenge, for myself. I had spent too long carrying the weight of her betrayal, questioning my worth, wondering if she would ever regret it. But none of that mattered anymore, because while she was part of my past, she would never define my future. The pain would fade, slowly, like a scar that no longer hurt but still remained. And one day, I would wake up and realize that I no longer cared. I wouldn't need to prove anything. I wouldn't need to see her regret. I would be free. So I took a deep breath and let the past slip away. For the first time in a long time, I looked ahead. And for the first time, the future didn't feel empty. It felt like a new beginning.
That's the end of this twisted tale. What do you think? Hit that like button if it got your heart racing, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more real-life infidelity stories. Don't miss the next one. Ring the bell and join the ride. See you next time.